Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and we're talking about the 5 ending paths. So we're in Chapter 7, Siege of Calamon. We're at the end of Chapter 7, which is also the end of the adventure, okay? And the player characters have dropped the Flying Citadel, they've defeated the Red Army, they have sent Lord Soth packing. They've defeated Western Kern. They've defeated Solamnia. They've defeated Caradoc. They've defeated all these they've defeated Consaldi Fire Eyes. They've defeated Lord Baccharis and Baccharis the Younger. They've defeated Red Ruin, the Dragonel Ace. Right? They've really wrecked a lot of people through this book. Right? These major big bads. Right? And I want to talk about the second possible, and at this point they literally get the Princess Leia, hey, let me put this Calamon medallion on you, right? And they put this Calamon medallion on them, and Marshal Vendry offers them the possibility of being Knights of Calamon, which I've already discussed. What I want to talk about right now is Knight Darrett. He is the squire of Knight Benvic, okay? Who is a full-on Knight of Solamnia, and I believe she was Order of the Rose, right? And so Knight Darrett has been with the player characters this entire time, on and off. Like, he's broken off a little bit and then come back, right? But Knight Benvic at the beginning of the story, and I really kind of wonder now why F.C. Snyder really even included Knight Benvic, because she doesn't play any really critical roles other than, Knight Darrett is a squire to her, and Knight Darrett is trying to become a Knight of Solamnia. But she is Knight of Solamnia, but she does nothing, right? She doesn't really help, defeat Lord Soth or any of these major big bads within the adventure, right? And but Knight Darrett says, I'm going to go to Malgoth, right? And one of the reasons why Darrett is here is Darrett is like, so we know Calamon now, but we don't know Malgoth and we don't know Palanthas. And these are two other major cities within Solamnia, right? And at this point, you have the player characters, and they have just saved Calamon. Knight Darrett is like, hey, I'm getting my night bars on, and I get to go over to Solamnia now and become a Knight of Solamnia. And also, the player characters actually have the option of starting as Knights of Solamnia, right? So at this point, they have this option to receive their Knight of Calamon. Can they put down their Knight of Solamnia ranks to become Knights of Calamon? Or do they simply become, can they just, and we already know the answer to this, right? If you're a Knight of Solamnia, right, you have to go where you're ordered to go. Like, you don't get to pick your post in the military, right? Like, that's just not how it works, right? Although my wife reads a lot of Pride and Prejudice, and this is pretty astounding to me, but the British actually allowed people to buy officerships and then give them away as inheritances or to sell them off. I'm like, that's the worst way to run an army. If you ran an army where you allowed people, the British kind of suck. If they did at the time, and I don't know how much of this they kept, right? But could you imagine letting people buy officerships? If you did that, you might get wrecked by some upstart country. America. Woo! Love that victory over Britain that we got there. Right, okay. I guess they're an ally now. All right, okay, whatever. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep it going. All right, so basically, you have this... So basically, now the player characters have this option to go with Darrett, right? And they can either reconnect if they already have a background as a Knight of Solamnia. But I am telling you, I went into this book going, what am I supposed to think about the Knights of Solamnia? I don't really understand. I came out the other side of this book saying, I don't really know what to think about the Knight of Solamnia. Because the player handbook, actually, the Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen is hey, you could start as a Knight of Solamnia. And now, having read this entire book, right, I'm kind of why? They suck. They suck at every level. All you've shown me about the Knights of Solamnia is that they're really good at turning people evil, right? Lord Soth, Knight of Solamnia. Sarlamir, Knight of Solamnia. And every one of these is a major big bad villain. Caradoc, Knight of Solamnia, killed the entire council of Calamon. Just murdered a whole bunch of people, right? And then, and it just, the list goes on and on and on and on and on, right? Benvic, what did she do in the whole book, right? Like, Knight Darrett, who is not a Knight of Solamnia, trying to be one, does more than the knight he's squiring for. Like, it is, and so this is one area where you're like, this is an option for the player characters, right? Now, why would you do this, right? Why would the player characters get this option to go with Darrett and further align themselves or initially align themselves with Solamnia? Well, one thing is, Order of the Crown, Order of the Sword, Order of the Rose, all this history. It could be like we just defeated Tiamat. We have freed Calamon. We have proven our heroism. And here we go, right? We're going to restore Solamnia. That is interesting. That is very interesting, right? In that we can restore Solamnia, right? And so that is a big, big option for the player characters. Is like, there's been this very ancient order. They've served for a long time. And now, I think in the Dragonlance books, there was a very, famous Solamnic knight there, who was kind of like was a major part of the novels. And he really didn't do anything to restore the Solamnic order, right? Clearly. And so basically, at this point, the player characters can do something special. They can actually return honor to the Solamnia group, right? But this is a tough sell because you're kind of like, all you show me is that the Knights of Solamnia really suck. And just all they've ever done is really create like super powerful fighters who just turn bad, right? There's literally no good examples of any Solamnics, any Knights of Solamnia within Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. And I could say this too, right? After 30 years of these Dragonlance novels, none of Drizzt Do'Urden is way more famous than any Knight of Solamnia, right? Except Lord Soth, who's super evil, right? So I thought this was really interesting in that the players, the one thing they can accomplish with the Knights of Solamnia is restore them to actual honor, right? And so I guess that is an interesting option. This is one of 5 endings that come out of the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. And I will say, every D&D canon hardback is amazing, but they're not perfect. And this is one area where I really felt Hickman and Weiss kind of fell down. They didn't really give you a reason to root for Solamnia, for the Knights of Solamnia, and that kind of extends in this too. I really don't understand what I'm supposed to take away from the Knights of Solamnia. They're such a central part, but it feels like every F. Wesley Snyder, Hickman and Weiss, they're all like, hey, the Knights of Solamnia are really important. They suck and they're all super evil. And you're like, why am I supposed to like these guys again? So, one, that's my takeaway. I do think it was a failing of the book that it didn't explain it. Maybe there's something I'm missing that I don't understand. And I would love for you to educate me if there's just something about the Knights of Solamnia that I don't understand. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for letting me share this exploration of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen with you. Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and you send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.